Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. When you think of the traditional kicker in football, odds are, no matter who you think of a right-footed kicker. Why that's the case, and whether there's a scientific reason as to why you really don't see a whole lot of left-footed kickers in football, I'm not sure. I'm sure that Bill Belichick would love to dive into the weeds of that and the difference between a left-footed kicker and a right-footed kicker. And sure, there are some exceptions to the rule, as you're seeing on your screen and have been seeing throughout the video. But left-footed kickers are a bit of a rare breed. When you have a left-footed kicker, it changes everything, not just offensively, but defensively. Not only does the holder have to line up on the opposite side, but you're probably going to have to realign your players on the defensive line to try and block the kick and get pressure, since the ball might come up a different way, and the guy coming off of the edge has to come off of the other side. Everything is in reverse, and it can be an adjustment for sure. However, when thinking of ways to prepare for said adjustment and to prepare for facing a left-footed kicker, look, I'm not one to tell people how to prepare for things. The greatest dodgeball team of all time prepared by putting blindfolds on and running directly into traffic. So different strokes for different folks. Having said that, I am fairly confident that of all the ways to prepare for a left-footed kicker, and of all the ways to try and figure out how to defend one, in 1976, the Green Bay Packers came up with the worst, the dumbest, and the stupidest idea of the bunch. And I do not say that lightly. This man right here is Bart Starr. He was an amazing quarterback, but my God was he a terrible head coach. And I've talked at length on this channel before about his ineptitude, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And this is a story that you probably don't know about, but it's absolutely ridiculous and seems like it was created by a crazy person straight out of a sitcom. Because prior to a 1976 game between the Green Bay Packers and the Oakland Raiders, Starr tried something unconventional that backfired in a big-time way, to the shock of absolutely no one with a brain or more than 5 working brain cells. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the dumbest special team strategy in Packers history, and the dumbest moment in the history of Bart Starr's coaching career. Before I talk about the absolutely idiotic thing that the Packers did to get ready for this game, which I promise you, you're not going to believe because it's that stupid, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as the kickers on both sides of the coin. It's October 24th, 1976. It's week 7 of the NFL season. And as we hit the halfway point of the year in the biggest game ever played between these two teams, we've got a battle at the Oakland Coliseum between the Green Bay Packers and the Oakland Raiders. The Raiders entered this game looking like one of the top teams in football, as they sit atop the AFC West with a 5-1 record. Meanwhile, the Packers sit at 3-3, and absolutely need to win this one to keep their playoff hopes alive, seeing as back then, only 4 teams in each conference made it to the playoffs. And the current wildcard if the season ended today in the St. Louis Cardinals, and the current NFC Central winner if the season ended today in the Minnesota Vikings, had 5 wins. The Packers had no room for error whatsoever the rest of the way, so they needed to find some way to knock off one of the best teams in football, to have any shot at keeping their playoff hopes alive, because dropping below 500 at the halfway point was a recipe for disaster. And to get ready to play the Raiders, obviously, you had to take their great offense into account with guys like Cliff Branch, Ken Stabler, Art Shell, and Gene Upshaw. And you had to take their defense into account with guys like Phil Villapiano, Ted Hendricks, Willie Brown, and Jack Tatum. But there are 3 phases to the game, with special teams being the other one. And this meant that you had to prepare for this man right here, their kicker, Fred Steinfurt. Oddly enough, I've done a video before about Steinfurt, so if you want to learn more about him and just how good he was later on in his career, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Steinfurt was not very good by this point in his career. He was drafted in the 5th round of the 1976 NFL Draft and was just 4 for 8 on field goal attempts, having missed 3 of his last 5 entering this game. But what made him so unique was the fact that he was a left-footed kicker. The last kicker the Raiders faced, in their game against the Philadelphia Eagles, was Horst Muhlmann. He's right-footed, as was just about every kicker back then, and every kicker that the Packers faced. Sure, there were exceptions to the rule, like Gary Yepremian, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But for the most part, if you were facing a kicker, you were facing someone who was kicking with their right foot, meaning that everything was in reverse. And for the Green Bay Packers, as you could probably guess, they were one of the many teams that had a right-footed kicker, as their kicker was this man right here, Chester Markle. Today, if you know of Markle, you probably know of him for what he did in the 1980 season opener against the Chicago Bears, when he scored the game-winning touchdown while high on cocaine, in a story that could only happen in the 1980s. However, by this point in 1976, Markle was one of the better kickers in football. In 2 of the previous 4 seasons, Markle was the league leader in field goals made. In 2 of the previous 4 seasons, Markle was a Pro Bowler. In 2 of the previous 4 seasons, Markle was an AP first-team All-Pro. And he was only a few years removed from legitimately receiving MVP votes, thanks to helping Green Bay make the playoffs off the strength of his leg. The good news for the Packers was that he was a great kicker, even if he didn't really have a chance to show it so far in 1976, seeing as the Packers hadn't attempted a field goal in 4 of their last 5 games entering this one. The bad news, though, was that he was right-footed, making it tough for the special teams unit to prepare for Fred Steinfurt and the way he kicks the football. Now, there are 2 ways as a team that you can prepare for a left-footed kicker. Option 1 is to, quite simply, not do anything. Just practice your special teams like normal and make some notes about how to adjust and whatnot. But for the most part, just do exactly what you've been doing. That's what most teams in this situation do. Or, if you're really worried about facing a left-footed kicker, you can always do option 2, which is to sign a left-footed kicker for the week. Left-footed kickers are rare, but they're not that rare that you can't just sign a left-footed kicker for the week, almost like a scout team kicker, and just practice against him, with the intention of releasing him as soon as the game is over. Both of these seem like pretty logical options. Either just kick with the man you've been watching this whole time, Chester Markle, as though nothing was different, or sign a left-footed kicker and go from there. However, for some crazy reason, Packers head coach Bart Starr decided to try a third option. He opted for something that, quite frankly, I did not think was possible, or that anyone in their right mind would consider. What if, and hear me out on this, you just had Chester Markle kick left-footed? We don't want to waste a roster spot on a left-footed kicker, and we want to practice against a left-footed kicker. So let's just have Markle kick left-footed. Seems like a good idea in theory, until you realize that there's an obvious problem with this plan that becomes apparent within 3 seconds of coming up with the idea. Oh yeah, Chester Markle is not left-footed. Chester Markle is right-footed. He cannot kick with his left foot. This is like if the Jaguars were playing the Dolphins, and in order to practice getting ready to face off against Tua, the Jags had Trevor Lawrence throwing left-handed. This is not something that you just pick up on the fly. Most people have a dominant hand or a dominant foot, and trying to do something with the other side is almost impossible. If you don't believe me, if you're right-handed, and you have a writing utensil and a sheet of paper in front of you, try writing something down with your left hand. Notice how awkward and bizarre that feels? Well, that's what the Packers had Chester Markle do in practice to simulate going up against the left-footed kicker that the Raiders had. And you're never going to believe what happened next. You're never going to believe what happened when the Packers had their right-footed kicker try and kick left-footed throughout practice. Shocker, Markle got injured. Markle injured his left foot in something that I think every single person in America could have seen coming, except for the idiots in charge of the Packers back then. The Packers had to sign a kicker, signing Errol Mann after the injury because Markle injured his left foot. So this grand plan of theirs to prepare for a left-footed kicker on the Raiders left them without their actual star kicker at full strength. It's like preparing for a left-handed pitcher by having your right-handed pitcher who cannot throw with his left hand throwing lefty, and then being surprised when that results in said pitcher getting injured. Seriously, what the heck did you think was going to happen? I agree with this writer here. It was a bizarre strategy. It was weird. There are some things that just seem so stupid on paper, they don't think anyone will be dumb enough to try it. And then, along comes Bart Starr. Along comes Bart freaking Starr to actually have this kicker try this, in a move that sums up his entire tenure as Green Bay's head coach. As for how the game went, like I said, the Packers needed to win this one to have any realistic shot at keeping their playoff hopes alive. And they did not do that. They kept it close, which surprised a lot of people, seeing as the Raiders were favored by 14 points. But when all was said and done, the Raiders prevailed, taking it by a final score of 18-14, with all 18 of their points coming in the second quarter. The Packers had no answer whatsoever for eventual Hall of Fame quarterback Ken Stabler, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, as he threw 3 touchdowns and had a passer rating of 117.1, which is incredible for any era, but especially for 1976, when the average passer rating was hovering around the mid-60s. Combine that with Green Bay committing a ton of penalties to shoot themselves in the foot, committing 13 penalties for 151 yards, a stagnant run game that averaged under 4 yards per carry, and a sloppy offensive showing where they turned the ball over 4 times, and it's no real surprise that the Packers lost this one. But obviously, you're dying to know what happened with the special teams in this game. Well, the Oakland Raiders didn't even attempt a single field goal this game, so all of that hard work was for absolutely nothing. And as for the Packers, even though Chester Markle was able to play in this game and recover from that left foot injury, he missed his only field goal attempt. So good job, Green Bay. You screwed up your own kicker in the process, and it didn't even matter in the long run. You really thought that one through, didn't you? So what's the moral of the story here? It really should go without saying. But if you want to practice against a left-footed kicker, then sign a left-footed kicker. Don't teach a fish how to climb a tree. Don't have a right-footed kicker try and kick left-footed in practice to simulate those conditions. Not only will it make your kicker worse, and not only will it make no sense whatsoever when you think about it for more than a few seconds, but it will likely lead to the kicker getting injured, because they were not built for practicing with their opposite foot. If you're a predominantly right person, and you need a left person for the job, then hire a left person. Don't try and get the right person to go left, because that'll just be awkward, uncomfortable, stupid, and painful for everyone involved. Bart Starr was an absolutely terrible head coach, and this incident with Chester Markle might be the stupidest move of his entire career, of which there are many to choose from, because he should have left this idea in the trash, right where it belonged. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.